Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Fandom Track here at ConTinual. I'm your host, Gail Martin, and tonight we're going to talk about how you only live once unless you're a Winchester. And there are some exceptions to that rule. So before we dive in, let's let our panelists introduce themselves, and I'll start with Michelle.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle Crowley. I am a lecturer at Northern Kentucky University, and I teach popular culture, communication, and just a bunch of nerdy stuff.
Lola.
It says here I'm Lola Strickland, but online I go by Lola Laracy. I should change that at some point. And I'm a writer, podcaster, and I just do all kinds of stuff.
There you go. Theresa.
Hi, I'm Theresa Glover. I'm the author of the Caitlin Kelly Monster Hunter series at Falstaff Books, and I'm also an editor at Falstaff Books, a writer with Authors Essentials, and one of the minions behind ConTinual. Wahaha.
Wahaha, yes. And as Gail Martin, I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, steampunk, and more. As Morgan Bryce, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance, but it's all got that paranormal piece to it, which is why I'm here as a huge Supernatural fan. So resurrection in Supernatural, you know, there aren't a whole lot of shows that have to have Venn diagrams showing how many times people have come back from the dead and kind of have a competition going. Supernatural really kind of corners the market on that. Over 15 years, has it taken the suspense out of dying? What do you think? Theresa?
My connection glitched and I heard resurrection and then my name. So I'm not really sure what you asked.
You're coming back.
Of technology.
Over 15 years with all of the death and resurrection, has it taken some of the suspense out of dying?
I don't think so, because not only is there's always that minor possibility, with the exception of a few characters, that they're really not going to come back. And even when they do come back, are they going to be the same as when they left to begin with? Because we've seen, you know, the characters, especially Sam and Dean, go through some pretty huge changes through their death and resurrection cycles. So I don't think that there's a lack of suspense. And you know, in the last season, we did get left with that little crumb of hope that we may still see Crowley again, because I'm not convinced he's dead. I still expect to see him come back in one of these last few episodes.
Which all depends on whether or not he and B can smooth things over.
Right.
He did say on Twitter he's never going back. He said that a few years ago.
Time ago. So I don't know.
Things change.
Things change. How about you, Lola? Lola, does it take the drama out of it at all for you?
No, because I read so much about the actors that, you know, I know that, you know, they may come back, they may not come back, and it makes me excited because it means they may come back. And I'm like, ooh, how's it going to come back? Like when we heard that John Winchester was going to come back, it's like, how are they going to do that? Oh my goodness, he's been dead for 10, 12 years, you know, oh my goodness. And so it actually makes me very excited because you get to see the actor again, hopefully, unless they recast Ruby, you know, and all the others that they've recast. But, you know, it's exciting to me because it's like visiting an old friend.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Michelle?
Up until the start of season 15, I was never surprised when someone came back. It's like, okay, yep, they're back. But since Billy made her edict at the beginning of season 15 that, all right, guys, this is it. You are not coming back. You are, especially for the boys, you are not coming back. Although, kind of like what Lola said, it's like, I do look forward to seeing certain actors again and their roles and their talents and whatnot. But I don't know, death is never a finality on Supernatural. Like there's even a small part of me, even though it's not going to happen, that I expect Mary Winchester to pop back. And it's, you know, and there was a story that came out earlier this year that a certain Supernatural actor was coming back for the final couple episodes. And I was not at all surprised. I'm like, oh, okay, here they come back. So I hope I guess I just hope that they give the same intensity and the same type of performance that we're used to. And, you know, I enjoy it. I enjoy when these characters just pop back up on screen.
I think one of the things that fascinates me, and Theresa, you kind of alluded to this, is we have all the angst when the character dies, but the reaction from the one that's left behind always fascinates me, because, you know, Dean goes out and kills somebody when Sam's gone, but Sam burns down the world to get Dean back. Dean kind of is positioned as being the more extreme brother, but he's really not. Sam's the one who is just gonna level the planet if that's what it takes, no regrets, to get Dean back. And I find that interesting in how they deal with the loss. Now, was anybody watching from the very beginning, before we knew that the Winchesters were on a bungee, you know, from the afterlife? Because seeing that first, the ending to season 1 in the car wreck, and then the ending to season 2 with all hell breaks loose and Sam dying, that has to be, that had to have been a lot scarier the first time through, when you couldn't just look it up in Super Wiki. Do we have anybody who's been around that long to remember? Okay, Lola?
It's been 15 years, so I can't say I really remember. But I was watching back then, and I just remember thinking, well, they're the stars of the show, so they'll probably be okay. You know, and I've learned throughout the time, and I tell people when they start watching Supernatural, only get attached to the boys. Don't get attached to anybody else. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm the kind of person who reads the end of a book if I think it's getting too stressful, because I want to know if it's going to turn out okay. Mm-hmm. And I will admit that in binge watching the first 11 seasons, I would frequently go ahead on Super Wiki so that I knew what was coming up. You know, if the boys stopped speaking to each other, I needed to know it was going to be okay in 2 more episodes. And that just lowered my internal stress. But, you know, going through it for the first time, you had to wonder what was going on here, because, yeah, they're the main characters, but, you know, people leave shows all the time and die off. So I can imagine that. But does death, the Winchesters have gotten kind of used to dying and coming back. Dean's been, you know, rather cavalier about it.
He was in hell for 30 years.
Yeah. But, you know, when he swallowed all the pills when Sam got killed by the werewolf, or when he jabbed him, you know, when he shot himself full of whatever there on the stair landing to find out how to find the rest of the ghosts, that's really kind of pushing your luck on coming back from the dead.
Well, in the time that he resigned himself to be buried in the box at the bottom of the sea when they couldn't resolve the mark, I mean, he was ready to go, and, you know, no second thoughts. So, yeah, I mean, he does get pretty cavalier about it, but I think that level of hubris is appropriate for both of them, simply because it's almost like they have a bit of a license with fate, I guess you'd say, or, you know, not necessarily with Chuck, because we know he's not really on their side, but like, they know that as long as they go out in the purpose of saving the world and doing it, there's a shot they're coming back. And if they don't come back, they're okay with it, because they went out doing the right thing.
And they also know that the other brother is going to do anything and everything possible in order to bring them back. So there's, I mean, even though Dean has resolved himself that, yeah, I'm going to die, there's a small part of his brain that says, Sam is going to tear the world apart until I come back. And, it's vice versa.
Which was, and I still say the whole thing about Sam not looking for him in purgatory was out of character and lousy writing. But I think that was part of his disappointment with Sam is, no, wait. He even says, oh, we just tell each other that. We don't really mean it. The idea that you go on without me. That isn't really what I expected. What, you didn't?
Sam was so broken at that point. I mean, he had, for the first time in his life, Sam had no one. So, I mean, I'm on the train that Amelia never existed, or at least didn't exist to that status of relationship. But yeah.
I love that headcanon that she was actually a hallucination that got him through all that soft focus, glowy light in the beginning. Yeah. No, I like that so much better than it being real. But that set Sam up to burn the world down twice for Dean as a demon and the Mark of Cain, because he let him down once. He was not letting him down again.
He had to prove himself.
Mm-hmm.
Which is also why Sam was so okay with Dean killing him at Death's request with the Mark of Cain.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Dean just kills Death, which doesn't happen a whole lot in other shows. And Death comes back, pissed.
I would have been too.
I loved Billy's room with all the books. That's a fascinating thought.
Books already written.
And yet, she either lied or reality changed, because at first he had like a whole library of how he could die. Then it was down to one book and it had to be the Malik box. Then the Malik box didn't pan out, so I guess that wasn't exactly, fated.
Team free will.
Yeah, team free will.
Team free will. I mean, you think about it, when anybody expects either one of the boys to do something specific, at least one of them will subvert those expectations and go off rail, which I think is kind of how you can look at the books and how they handled those outcomes and fates. Is they didn't make the choices that God wrote into the plan for them. Therefore, it destroyed all the possible opportunities and had to be rewritten. I mean, we don't know that, one of those choices in the final story for the Malik box, if he made one change, maybe he's now got another library all over again.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why Chuck hates them so much. He can't control them.
Yeah.
Fair.
Which also kind of calls into an interesting, I'm not sure how much of a carryover there is, but in Sarah Gamble's The Magicians, they also have a library of your story, of you, that it's in a very restricted area and it causes death to whoever gets after it. But it's still the concept that your story is written. So do you change it? Can you change it? And then what are the repercussions if you do change it?
What are some of your, and again, one of those questions that sounds natural with this show and wouldn't for others. What are some of your favorite deaths in the show? Michelle?
I mean, I love Crowley's death. Also, I mean, politics aside, he had his differences with the crew and whatnot, but just the way that it happened and the way that it was just, I mean, there was honestly, for one of the first times, there was an air of finality to it. It's like, all right, he's done. He's gone. And I'm okay with this. I'm sad, but I'm okay with this.
See, but I don't think he's dead. I don't think he's dead because there was too much of that moment with the rat scurrying away, and we'd seen him go into a rat body before. So I don't think he's dead. So it could be a red herring, but I think he's coming back.
I don't remember the part with the rat. I need to rewatch that.
Yeah, it's at the very end after he dies. The camera focuses on a rat that's running away.
Huh.
And that could be the producers just leaving the door open.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, hey, we want him to come back.
I think my favorite one was actually Mary Winchester's death.
First or the second?
The final death, her
Okay.
real death.
Okay. I was gonna say the first one, that's iconic.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, so many of them are iconic, but I think her real death, simply because it started such a huge devolvement of everything that had come together. It's like it got to the moment where everything was finally gelling in a really nice way, and then it just all spiraled apart, and that was just beautiful.
You know, side note, since Lola mentioned the original Mary on the ceiling, I have noticed in just doing the most recent rewatch that I don't know where they find the ugly nightgowns for dead women to wear, but there is the nightgown of the dead woman who is supposed to be the virtuous martyr, which I don't think in reality anybody under 90 would wear a nightgown like that. And I noticed it when Nick goes back to the house and sees his dead wife, and damn, she's wearing the dead martyr nightgown.
Maybe the same one.
It sure looks like it. It is equally ugly, if not. So I'm just putting it out there that I don't want to spend my afterlife in a really ugly nightgown.
Team free will. I want pajamas.
Give me like comfy sweats or something.
Yeah. Jessica at least got a cute shorty outfit, but yeah, the martyr nightgown.
I want cute pajamas with a saying on it, you know?
Yeah, maybe
Party all
cat.
the time or something.
How about you, Lola? What's your favorite death?
My favorite is Rowena's real death, because it was so heroic, the way she just fell into hell. Because we all, you know, she was always selfish. She was always a villain until the last few seasons. And she truly did something selfless to save everybody. Of course, now she's the queen of hell and she's living the best life, but she did sacrifice herself. I thought it was very poetic.
Yeah. I mean, that was definitely a class act. I think from an iconic standpoint, Sam's death at Cold Oak just, you know, really kicked everything into high gear. But Red Meat is one of my favorite episodes, with Dean thinking Sam was killed by the werewolf, and then Dean making sure he goes to try to bargain with Billy, and Sam friggin' Winchester, who hauls himself out of the cabin, drags himself to the Impala, fishes out the bullet, drives the Impala to the hospital, and then shoots the werewolf before collapsing. I mean, yeah, that's Sam friggin' Winchester. Yes. So I thought he bounced back from nearly dead very well. So I love the idea that this whole back and forth with death is so intrinsically tied up with free will. Because if you think about it, all the powerful characters are the ones that everybody thinks kind of governs all that. The angels, the demons, the God, Satan, you know, Lucifer. And they keep getting their plans completely mucked up by two boys from Kansas who just won't stay dead, which is kind of cool. You know, babies even died and come back several times. We've got a show with Car that gets, you know, resurrected frequently.
Well, there is
because of Dean's, tireless obsession with her, which is also kind of an allegory to the boys, that their obsession with each other keeps them coming back.
Mm-hmm. And in the episode, The End, where that Dean didn't stay obsessed with saving Sam. He didn't save Baby either, because we see Baby off in the weeds, you know, rusted out Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
What deaths surprised you the most? Lola?
Oh, well, Charlie. It also broke me the most because I love that actress, and you know, she was every girl, she was all of us, and you know, I just really rooted for her. I usually don't become attached to the characters because I know, you know, they're probably gonna die. But man, I became attached to her. And to me, she was like their little sister. And when she died, and they were broken up, they were totally broken up. But even now, I'm like, how did they get over Charlie so quickly? You know, I'm like, she was their responsibility. And it's like, it's aggravating and surprising and frustrating.
Michelle?
Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The just the loss of Bobby, and even a couple episodes before when they lost his salvage yard, his house, because that was their safe haven for the longest time. And so they go through the process of losing their home, plus then losing the better father figure that they'd never had. And it was just, I mean, I had to stop watching it for a while. I'm like, I can't process this. You know, even though he did eventually come back, it was just, I mean, it was just gut-wrenching. I mean, aside from Swan Song, that was the episode that I just ugly cried at the end.
Because he felt like our father, you know, it's like, no, he was their stable, you know, he was their rock. He was what kept them from going off the crazy end.
Or at least he tried.
Back from heaven, huh?
At least he tried to keep them from going off crazy.
Right. Yeah.
Always worked. How about you, Theresa?
Okay, so I'm super jaded and I'm a horror fan, so I can't say that any of the deaths surprised me simply because I had already run through all of the available seasons of The Walking Dead and Game of Thrones, where both of those shows, you don't get attached to anybody and you never know who's coming back or if they're coming back or if you saw what you saw and interpreted it correctly. So I came to Supernatural with those biases, and I always assumed somebody was going to die in an episode. I always assumed that somebody was going to come back in some way that same season or the next season. So I never really lost hope or was too broken up about it because I wanted to see how they brought them back and how they changed once they did.
Yeah. And I think when you deconstruct it, coming at it from a writer perspective or a horror fan, and you kind of know what the beats are for the story, you sort of know what's coming.
Yeah.
I think
and plus I was sitting down to it at the point where there were still 13 and a half episodes when, you know, I started. So I knew that this was a long haul and I knew that they were in the last season. So it wasn't like I thought anybody was going anywhere permanently for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah. That is one of the things when you come into it and it already has a body of work as opposed to watching it unfold in real time, is you go, okay, I know he's still here in season 13. This is only season 2. He's got to come back somehow.
Right.
I think the one that surprised me the way they did it was probably Jack's death. You know, Chuck tried so hard to maneuver Dean into that Abraham and Isaac moment. And then when Dean didn't follow the rules, Chuck did it himself after having said he couldn't. And that, I think that Chuck killing Jack, and then when Cass had to kill Belphegor, but it's still Jack's body and it still looks like Jack. And that one hurt because you could really see, and Misha did a great job of this, you could really see in Cass's face how much it hurt, even though he knew it wasn't really Jack, which I thought was a very, very interesting twist. And
I mean, it's one of those super moves from the bad guy that kind of galvanizes the team together too, because it's not, it's no longer just evil, it's personal. And you've done this intentionally to get under the skin of these characters and they know it. So now it becomes revenge and not just justice.
mhm.
They're not just going through the hunter motions. They're really
Right.
in it, you know? Yeah.
Because you messed with the family.
Mhm.
But there's so many times that, especially Sam, has the conversation with another character saying that revenge is not worth it. You know, there's so much that you go through, and when you finally get to it, it's not satisfying.
And Dean is the thing.
Yeah. So this
Which-
whole concept of revenge killing, it absolutely, you know, it just implodes on itself by the third season.
And it's good that they have been able, you know, to learn from that. And how many times do you have to die before you learn from these things? But yeah, the idea that revenge might take somebody off the chessboard, but it isn't going to bring anybody back.
That's probably why it makes it hurt more, because they know that, you know, they've lost these people. And especially like when Kevin, you know, that was another one that broke my heart, and he really was gone. You know, he was stuck in the ether, but you know, his body was gone. And so I think maybe those deaths have really kind of grounded them a little bit, because they know they're not coming back.
I really would love to have seen Ellen and Ash again. I mean, we did get to see Ash hacking heaven, and that was pretty satisfying. But those were two permanent deaths that I always kept hoping wouldn't be completely permanent.
Especially because Ash really didn't have a good death scene. You know, they just found his charred remains. It's like, but I mean, come on, even Arthur Ketch got his heart ripped out by a demon. Like, why can't Ash have something similar?
Not off screen. We don't want them to die off screen. We have to torture ourselves by watching it.
Exactly. We like that pain.
That was kind of,
Kevin with his eyes burned out.
that was how I kind of suspected that Rowena wasn't gone for good, because the death scene, she'd been there long enough to warrant a good death scene, and getting killed kind of off camera just seemed a little suspicious to me.
Especially since we know she's immortal anyways. It's like, you know, she's gonna find a way to come back.
Well, but she dug the little thingy out of her shoulder. So she, you know, it was supposed to be her permanent death.
I forgot about that. Okay.
But then she still managed to live on beyond the grave, because she's badass. She's Rowena.
Yeah. And this certainly wasn't a major character by any means, but one of the deaths that bothered me the most was probably when she had to kill Oscar. The child that she loved, the little Polish boy that she made immortal, and then she had to kill him to work the spell to get the mark of Cain off of Dean. That one was, I think, because it caught me by surprise. You know, this wasn't a character, this wasn't Crowley. This was somebody who was kind of innocent in the whole thing, who really sort of got thrown under the bus.
Same way with Gavin MacLeod, Crowley's son. You know, like you mentioning that, it just reminded me, it's like those two deaths, those are the ones it's like, there is no opportunity for them to come back. There is no reason for Chuck or Death to you know, reanimate them. They are final. And so how do I deal with the fact that this character that I kind of liked from Supernatural is dead, not coming back? Like, how do I deal with that? That was, yeah, like you saying that just reminded me. It's like, yeah, like how do I deal with that? And personally, it's not very good.
Any of the deaths now, you know, Charlie's death just hit everybody so wrong on so many different levels. And I was just sorry that I knew they couldn't keep Felicia Day for long, but I would have rather had her go off and stay in Oz than, you know, die like she did. But any other deaths like that that just struck you as wrong?
Adam, their brother. That actually really upset me from the writer's perspective, because the Winchesters are all about family, and they had an actual brother, and it's almost kind of like they forgot about him. It's like, oh yeah, we did have that brother, didn't we? So that
There were themes to that effect, yes.
yeah, I was like, that actual blood brother, and he's a footnote, so that kind of upset me.
Theresa?
I'm trying to think if there's like a death that really bothered me. But again, I'm jaded and I read a lot of horror, so I kind of don't get too disturbed over that stuff. I know that's really weird to say. So no, I don't think that there's one that stood out to me as particularly unsettling. I think that for the most part, they are well-earned deaths, or they are in keeping with the characters, other than the two that, you know, you guys have mentioned with the little boy and Crowley's son. But again, I still get to the point where when I sat down and watched them, because I was so far behind, I was always looking for that person to come back. I was always looking for that next episode. How are they going to sneak this person back in? Especially for me, clinching that moment was with people coming back over and over is the fan service episode where John and Mary Winchester come back and the boys sit down and have dinner as a family. So I'm always looking for that moment, even if it's in the last couple of episodes where we, you know, take off into heaven and we actually end up seeing these people again. I'm always looking for that moment where we're going to catch a glimpse of all of these people that have touched their lives.
How about you, Michelle?
Mick.
Yes.
Adam Fergus's character. The fact that he, you know, we saw him as this guy that obviously, I mean, he had, I guess, the know-how just as much as Arthur Ketch, and he was taken out by a bullet to the head. It's like, but wait a minute, like, you guys went to the same school, you guys know that there's the same amount of, you know, witchcraft or whatever. Like, why did Mick get such a really unceremonious, just quick death right after his redemption arc, which I guess we should expect with Supernatural? But as soon as we had Mick redeeming himself, he was out. And that just never sat well with me. That, and also I love the actor. I've seen him multiple times at the conventions, and I'm just like, I want more of you. Like, please, I want to see you more.
Well, and not everybody dies immediately after their redemption arc. So, you know, it wasn't a given that, oh, he redeemed himself, now he must die, because some people hang around for a while. Mm. I think one of the deaths that struck me as illogical and forced was Eileen's death. She's this badass hunter until they need her not to be, and then she gets killed really easily. Okay, if she was that bad at it, how did she last this long? That's the kind of forced error, sloppy writing that pisses me off. If she's really a hunter and she's really good at it, then she ought to be hard to kill. You can still kill her, but make it worth your while, as opposed to, you know, what? She runs through the forest and trips and somebody kills her. Really?
It's an idiot plot point.
Yeah, it was done because that wasn't the focus of the episode and they wanted to move on quickly to the next thing, which wasn't really fair to the character. So
it happens a lot with women.
A lot of people say that, yeah, sometimes I have to defend Supernatural because people say, yeah, pretty much if you're a woman, you're a red shirt on there. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, but I like the Winchester, so yeah, I can't really defend it, but I'm like, yeah.
Not that, you know, Supernatural isn't an equal opportunity, you know, kill everybody. There's certainly plenty of
Everybody does. That's what I usually say.
yeah.
That's usually when I say, look, if you can't be attached to anyone but the Winchesters, everybody's gonna die, female and male.
This is true. What do you think we're going to see coming up here in the next few episodes? As of now, you know, we haven't seen the end of season 15. What do you think, Michelle?
We are going to see a Harry Potter moment where not only will the Winchesters die, but they will also not die.
How so? Like, they'll be trapped somewhere or something? What do you mean?
I think they'll be given an opportunity, like with Harry Potter, they'll be given an opportunity of, do you want to die right now, or do you want to go back? And depending on, you know, wherever they are in the story arc, they're going to decide, yeah, I want to die right now, or no, I want to keep living. And I think they will make that decision independently of each other and then deal with the fallout of that.
Okay.
I still think Crowley's coming back, and I think he's going to have some kind of interaction that determines how all this shakes out with God. I know he's not Lucifer, but I have a feeling that he's going to get his icky little fingers right in the middle of it, and chaos will ensue.
I think it's interesting that we've had both Jared and Jensen talking about how they don't really see this as a permanent goodbye to Supernatural. They can see coming back after they've done some other things. So that does sort of beg how this ends, because there's only so far back they can do the lost episodes, given that they don't age in reverse. So there's got to be some window open there, or you can't really do a movie of the week a couple of years from now. At least that's my hope.
I think they should, you know, have children, you know, go off, have children, and then in 15 years we get little baby Winchesters. Baby Winchesters.
No.
And they're little hunters. I think that would be adorable.
No, please, no.
I think it's
no
going to end
child deserves that life. Come on, like we should have learned that from Sam and Dean. No child deserves that life.
Ethical hunters, you know, they still go to school and get to do activities and stuff, and they hunt on the weekends.
So the British men of letters made American.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, you know, fan fiction has served those curtain fic episodes up for pretty much every possibility.
I think it's going to come down to a moment where they're going to have to find a way to sacrifice each other, whether it's their relationship, their memories, or one of them dies, but possibly not in a permanent way. But it's going to come down to that question of their loyalty to each other and how they deal with that versus saving the world.
Well, and the track record so far is Brothers 15, World 0.
Right.
So, you know, sometimes you're cheering for them and then you go, wait, the rest of us are all going to die, but at least they come back.
Yeah, it sucks to kind of be their friend because you know you're dispensable.
Your clock is ticking.
That's right. It's like, I'm only here for 2 seasons.
That's why Crowley was the smartest villain ever, because it's like anyone that gets close to the Winchesters needs a violent end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't want to be in their orbit.
Well, folks, believe it or not, we have gone through our time already. So, see, this is what happens when you have people who have died, you know, 100 and some times, like
talk about. I know,
like Dean in Mystery Spot, which, you know, really had a number of the most bizarre deaths ever. Does this taco taste funny to you?
Dean dies in the shower.
Dean got eaten by a golden retriever. I mean, you know. Oh, well, folks, thank you so much for being here with me tonight. Let's go around and tell everybody where people can find you online. Theresa.
The easiest place to find me and my books is at falstaffbooks.com.
And Lola.
You can find me on Facebook under Lola Strickland, but I'm also everywhere under Lola Laracy, and Laracy is spelled Lariscy.
Awesome. And Michelle.
You can find me on Twitter at preheatingprof.
And you can find me online as Gail Z. Martin and Morgan Bryce. And of course, you can find ConTinual on Facebook and soon on the web. Thank you so much for joining us. There will be more supernatural fandom track here at ConTinual. We'll see you online.